Hey guys, I'm going to teach you all about point slope form. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to write the equation of a line in point slope form given different information about the line. So go ahead and get your binder, turn to the math section. Let's go ahead and take some notes. All right, so let's start with the situation with Leo. Leo knows the slope of a line and he knows it goes through this point. Without doing any calculations, can Leo easily write an equation for the line in slope-intercept form? Why or why not? Let's say Leo is going to try. He knows the slope goes in for m, but he doesn't know b. So he could substitute in the x and the y in for those points and solve for the b, which is the y-intercept. But if I can't do any calculations, the short answer is no. It's not easy to write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form if you don't immediately know the slope and the y-intercept. But that is where point slope form comes in. Point slope form is just another way you can write the equation of a line that you only need to know the slope and a point to write. Just like slope-intercept form is that y equals mx plus b template, this is the template for point slope form. Each part of this equation means something. M is still the slope. That doesn't change. It does move on the outside of parentheses, so just keep that in mind that you'll always see the slope next to the parentheses when the equation's in point slope form. Then you have your x sub 1 and your y sub 1. This is just a point on the line. X sub 1 is obviously your x coordinate, and then your y sub 1 is your y coordinate. Just like how in slope-intercept form you still have a y and an x in your equation of the line, you'll still have a y and an x just written out in point slope form as well. So let me show you an example of what an equation looks like in point slope form with number 1. You'll always start out with y minus the y coordinate. In this case, the y coordinate is 3 equals the slope, which is 1/4. You'll put your parentheses, x minus, and then you'll put your x point. So in this case, the x coordinate is 8. Close those parentheses, and this is the equation of this line in point slope form. It seems pretty simple, but common mistakes may happen, so it might help if you label your x and your y, and then your m is already labeled, obviously. Things also get tricky with the negatives, so we're going to go ahead and start by labeling our x and our y coordinates. We have our slope labeled already, and then let's just start by writing the equation. It starts out with a y minus the y point. So far, so good. Then we'll write equals, and then for the m, it'll be -2. We'll always put that parentheses. Now we're going to write x, and there is a minus in this point slope form. So we're going to write minus, but this x coordinate is negative. So keep that, write -6. This is correct. We did this right. But my brain immediately tells me that when I see a minus negative, I know I can write that in a simpler way. I know that minus negative means plus. So more often than not, in point slope form, when you see the minus negative, you're going to have to rewrite that as a plus. We'll do the same thing with number 3. If you're feeling brave, you can go ahead and try number 3 all by yourself and then press play when you're ready to check. Let's look at point slope form and start from the top. It says y minus, and then we write our y1. Our y coordinate is -11. So I can write y minus -11. But since minus negative means plus, you'll see it written y plus 11. Then we'll continue, equals our slope, which is 5/2. Put your parentheses, and x minus our x1, -2. Again, you see that minus negative. You won't see it written as a minus negative. You'll see it written as a plus. And this is the equation of that line in point slope form. Now that we've seen 3 examples, I think you should try to write the equation of Leo's line in point slope form. Take a minute to try that and press play when you're ready to check. All right, this is how you would see Leo's line written in point slope form. Again, just keeping in mind, I changed that to a +7 because otherwise it would have read x minus -7. Minus negative means plus. One more case you might run into is whenever one of your coordinates is 0. So let me show you what happens when you see that. You could see it written like this. This is what it is in point slope form. But again, my math brain tells me that y minus 0 is still just y. If you take nothing away from something, it's just that number. So in this case, you could also see the equation of this line written like this. So just a quick check-in. In your own words, explain how your equations were affected by the sign of the ordered pair values, whether they were positive or negative. Basically, in point slope form, the sign of the coordinate is opposite of how it appears in the equation. So that's just something to keep in mind as you go through these. Keeping that in mind, I'm going to do number 6, and then you're going to try 7 and 8 by yourself. We're going to identify the slope and the point from the equation of the line in point slope form. It's easiest to start with the slope. The slope is -7. It's always going to be the number that's next to the parentheses. It's the multiplier. The point is a little trickier, so I think it's helpful to label above these points the x and the y, and then remember it's the opposite of how it appears in the equation. So your coordinate would be positive 3 and positive 2 in that order. Looking at all these examples, go ahead and try number 7 and 8 all by yourself and press play when you're ready to check. All right, you should have got 9/4 as the slope, and then 3, -8 as the point in number 7. And then the slope is -2/3. The slope doesn't change signs, that's fine, but you want to pay attention to the signs for the point. The point would be -9 and -6 because that's the opposite sign. And in the equation of a line and point slope form, you do see those minuses or opposites in the equation. In number 9, we have a disagreement. Camden and Drew can both look at this equation in point slope form, and they agree that the slope is -8. That's correct. However, Camden thinks the line passes through the point -2, 1. While Drew thinks the line passes through the point 2, -1. Who do you agree with and why? Drew is correct because the coordinate point will have the opposite sign of the sign in the equation. The shortcut way to remember it is that it's always going to be opposite for point slope form. But if you just think about the equation in point slope form, or if you reference it, it's always going to start with y minus y, just like the slope formula. So if you end up with a plus in your equation, that means there had to have been a minus negative. That means the point had to have a negative for the y. Until you get the hang of it, you can always write it as minus negative, just like it's supposed to be, and then you can then change it to a plus when you see the minus negative. However, we are going to move on. Sometimes you're not just given the slope and the point. That would be awesome if it was, but sometimes you're just given the 2 points. And if you are, you're going to first find the slope. You're going to use the slope formula to do so. Then you're going to substitute the slope and one of the ordered pairs into that point slope form equation. So here's an example with Mrs. Bernice. She's asked her students to find the equation of the line that passes through this point, -2, 4, and 4, 22. Step 1, we're going to find the slope. Go ahead and do that now and press play when you're ready to check. You should substitute your values in, get 18/6, or more simply, 3. Now in each of these boxes to the right, we're going to substitute the slope and the given ordered pair into the point slope form equation. I'm going to do the one on the left. You're going to watch me do that and then do the one on the right. First thing I do, write out point slope form just like it's supposed to be written. Next, I'm going to substitute in my point and the slope. The y coordinate is 4. The slope is 3. The x coordinate is -2. So instead of writing minus -2, I'm going to write it as plus 2. I've done steps A and B, and I'm going to pause there for you to try to write the equation of the line in point slope form using this point. Go ahead and try that now and press play when you're ready to check. All right, this is the equation in point slope form for this point. Again, this is the exact same line as this one. They'll graph the same line. These are just 2 different points on that same line. So if Mrs. Bernice had asked you to write the equation of the line in point slope form that passes between these 2 points, you could have written this equation or this equation. Both are correct. Now let's do part C just to go ahead and prove a point. We want to rewrite each equation in slope-intercept form. This is always my go-to if I feel like I didn't do something right or if I just want to check my work. I like slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and take that 3 on the outside of parentheses and distribute it just like I would with any other number next to parentheses. Now in slope-intercept form, remember the y is by itself. It's y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to get rid of that -4 with a +4. And if I do it to one side, I've got to do it to the other side. I end up with y equals 3x plus 10. This equation is the exact same as this equation. It's just written different. This equation is the exact same as those equations. So go ahead and try this and make it in slope-intercept form all by yourself. Press play when you're ready to check. Hopefully you realized you didn't actually need to solve it. You should have already realized that you would end up with the exact same equation. All of these are just different ways to write the equations of a line. When it says y equals 3x plus 10, that's in slope-intercept form. But when you see equations written like this, those are in point slope form. We have 2 more examples where we are given 2 points. We have to write the equation of the line in both point slope form and in slope-intercept form. I'll try number 11 with you, then you're going to do 12 by yourself. What's the first step in getting this into point slope form? Whichever one you're doing first, you need to find the slope. It's in the names. So what is the slope between these 2 points? I got -2 over -4, which is the same thing as positive 1/2. So 1/2 is the slope. Next, pick either one of these points and plug it into point slope form. You could have written this equation or this equation and been correct. Now let's get the equation into slope-intercept form. So we want it to say y equals at the beginning. I would start by distributing the 1/2. Go ahead and take a minute to try that and press play when you're ready to check. All right, you should have got y equals 1/2 x minus 9, regardless of which equation you picked, because all three of the equations in orange boxes are the exact same. They'd graph the same line. They're just different ways to write them. So now you should go ahead and try number 12 all by yourself. Press play when you're ready to check. All right, so either of these equations is the line and point slope form, and then regardless of which equation you chose to manipulate back into slope-intercept form, you should have got y equals 6.5 x plus 5. Tables are no different. Whenever you're finding the equation of a line from a table, just pick 2 points. Doesn't matter which 2 points, find the slope and then move from there. You get to choose whether you want to write the equation of the line from the table in either point slope form or slope-intercept form. You just have to explain why you chose the form that you did. Take a minute and try 13 and 14 all by yourself, and then press play when you're ready to check. All right, for number 13, I would write this in slope-intercept form. Here is why. When I look at the trend in the table, I can see that it's going up 1/2 for every 2. 1/2 or 0.5 for every 2 is the same thing as 1/4 for every 1. So that's the slope. The other reason I would choose to write this table in slope-intercept form is because of that point right there. 0, -8 is the y-intercept, so b. And when I write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form, it's y equals mx plus b. I know the slope and I know the y-intercept. So this equation would graph this line. But on 14, it's not easy to see the y-intercept. I only see points. The trend in the table is that it's going down 15 for every 5. Down 15 for every 5 means that the slope is -3. And then since I have just all these points, it's just easier to go ahead and write it in point slope form. It doesn't matter which point you pick. Let's just pick y minus -1, so y plus 1 equals -3 for the slope, x minus 5. Didn't matter which point you picked, I just picked the first one. But once you have the equation of the line written in this form, it's enough to graph the line or write the rest of the points for the table. So sometimes slope-intercept form is best, sometimes point slope form is best. The important thing to take away is that both of them are great ways to write the equation of a line. And that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Bye!